I'm always kind of, just, looking, to reach out to, to young, sharp individuals. But yeah, I mean, before we get started, I'd obviously, like to introduce myself a little bit. But I also kind of wanted, to let this isn't gonna be like an interview. I don't want you to, be all professional. Like you can be yourself, So I don't want you, to feel like I'm just questioning you, or I'm just like bombarding you with questions. So feel free to, just have like a back and forth conversation. Um, but yeah, I mean, before we get started, just wanted to kind of share with you a little bit, yeah, I kind of reached out to, like sharing with you, a business opportunity, but I actually wanted, I'd say just emphasize that we won't really talk about too much about business, I'd say today. We might touch on like some key topics, but I honestly just really want to get to know you more, see if our goals, see if our values align. Because at this point, we're complete strangers, but that's why, I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know me, because I'm obviously real, we're meeting now. I'm not just like a bot on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's why I like to have like this little just one-on-one meeting, get to know you, see if our goals and values align. But yeah, I mean, without further ado, Jaden, um, I could just share with you a little bit about myself. My name is Christopher Castañeda. I'm actually I went into my third year with a background in management, business, and economics. And I actually am from the Bay Area, so that's why you see the little, SF behind me. But yeah, I'm pretty close to San Francisco, like 20-30 minute drive. But yeah, if I'm being, completely honest with you, yeah, I started my business about a year ago, but my first, second year in college, well, I'd say mostly like my first year, so like about like a year ago, 2 years ago, I was really a completely different person, than I am today, and so I was, maybe just like an average college student going out, partying, getting C's, not really caring about, my future, drinking, smoking, doing all those things, negative bad habits, and really just surrounding myself with very negative association, not very caring for like my future, kind of like what I wanted to do in life. I always said I wanted to kind of give back to my parents and be able to help them, um, but my actions never aligned. I'm not sure if you can kind of relate with me on that, but um, my parents, they do actually, come from like an immigrant background. They both come from Mexico. And so, because they came to this country, as kind of immigrants, at a very young age, they were both children, when they came. Um, all they kind of know what to do is we just work, 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 work. And so, pretty much, I mean, like, what I've been wanting to do is really just be able to give back to them. But throughout my whole life, I haven't really been able to give back. If anything, I've just been taking more from them. And I just felt really bad because, like I said, just growing up, I would just always kind of surround myself in these like negative associations, trying to like fit in and be cool. But in reality, I was just not just hurting myself, but hurting everybody I loved around me. And so, because of that, I was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was a freshman in high school. And I remember I had no dreams, no aspirations to go to college or whatsoever further on my career. And I actually ended up getting arrested. And so at 15 years old, I got arrested. I was like, man, this sucks. Man, it's New Year's. I'm getting arrested on New Year's. Like, this is not the way I wanted to start my new year. And so, kind of going through all that kind of just made me really visualize, like, hey, like, what am I doing with my life? What do I want to do? And so I kind of just, was like, wanted to just, like, let's say, just flip a switch in myself, because once I got out, I actually got expelled from my high school. Pretty much just a bunch of negative things were coming to me. I'm like, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? But just looking at my track record, I haven't really done anything positive. And so, my mom, she knew I was a good kid, just surrounding myself with a bunch of, bad people. And so my mom just, she wanted to just switch me school districts. She did that. And that's kind of when I actually, like, saw the, like, vision of actually, like, thinking of college. But when I did get out of, like, juvenile hall, I did go to continuation school. I had to start working at 15 years old, so, I tell this to like a lot of, young people like us, that I feel that, I feel like maturity doesn't come with age, but it comes with responsibility. And, at 15 years old, I had a lot of responsibilities. Like, I had to work, and none of my friends had a job at 15 years old. So I'm like, they're all going hanging out and stuff. And man, I got to go clock into, Baskin Robbins and scoop ice cream for 12 bucks an hour. Like, that wasn't fun. And on top of that, I had to like ride my bike to and from work, had to ride my bike to and from another city just to go to school. And so, kind of, just doing all these things really kind of just, like sharpened my mind I was like, all right, you know what? I need to just, really disassociate myself from everybody and really, just work on myself. So that's what I did. I went to a complete new school district, just changed my whole environment. And that's kind of when I got the actual idea of wanting to go to college. And so I took Avid. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that or not. But there was this teacher. She has like her PhD in there. She was just like teaching for passion, and so she saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. She's like, Christopher, you're a bright kid. You're very optimistic. You're very ambitious. I can see it in you. Have you ever thought about going to college? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that. Like, I'm trying. You think I'm trying to pay to go to school 4 more years on top of like my whole like school, like schooling them like the K through 12. Like, I'm not trying to do that. And she was like, oh, like why not? Like, what's stopping you? I'm like, well, this is what I had envisioned already. I saw my brother do it, so I'm like, why can't I do that? I saw my brother work 2 jobs right out of high school. He got himself a nice BMW. But what I didn't notice is that he only drove that nice BMW to and from work. He didn't have the nice lifestyle. He didn't have the time to actually enjoy that car. So I really saw myself. I'm like, that's not really the lifestyle I want to live. I want to be able to have time and money, not just money and work for other people's dreams and goals. And so, she really just brought the idea to me of, going to college, starting a career. And what really, I'd say, piqued my interest was when she told me, it's not about so much about what you know, Christopher, it's about who you know, the connections you can make, at college. And so I was like, you know what? Let me give it a shot. I applied to colleges. All the UCs rejected me, besides UC Merced. So I went there. I was like, you know what? It's a sign. I got a 3.4 GPA. It's got to get me somewhere, And so like UC Merced accepted me. They gave me like the best financial aid package. I'm like, I want to do it. I want to go out there. It's far, like 3 hour drive from where I live, so kind of like a long ways to go. But I decided to do it, and I went there, and that's actually kind of where I started a business society. I actually got connected with one of my business partners, but like I said before all that, my first year in college, the same relapse, hanging around with bad kids, going to parties, drinking, smoking, doing all these bad things. And I was like, man, I noticed this pattern in myself. I noticed like, like, why do I keep doing this? So that's why I kind of wanted to do something different. Like, what? Let me try to go to like business societies, join the club. I did that, became the director of the entrepreneurship department, was really, focused on wanting to start my own business. And that's actually when, like, I don't know, like a sign from God or something heard, and my business partner, Tone, actually reached out to me. And when I saw this guy, I was like, man, this guy is 19 years old. He works for Meta. He owns his own business, and he's a college student. I'm like, how's he doing all this? Like, I was really, like surprised. I was like, I wanted to learn from this guy. I'm like, he must know something that I don't know. So, just wanted to be open minded and learn about this opportunity. And so, yeah, I just, took full throttle, and I just wanted to learn about it throughout my, what, it was like 2 summers ago. I actually learned about the opportunity. And yeah, I mean, here I am now, a year into my business, e-commerce and franchising. But I mean, before anything else, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask you, Jaden, like, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself. I just kind of wanted to share a bit about myself, just so you know who I am. So, you're not just like, oh, who's this guy in front of me?
Yeah.
But
It's an amazing story how you're able to turn your life around, and now you're in a place where you're kind of working towards your goal, your dream. And I think that's amazing.
oh, yeah, I appreciate
Um,
that.
Thanks. So, okay, I can relate a little bit to the immigrant because my parents are from Ecuador. So they
Okay.
came, well, my dad came here when he was 15. My mom came here a little bit later. And then when they got married, they lived in Ecuador for a bit and then they came over here. And I've always been like, well, okay. So I'm in like the LA area ish,
Okay.
and my my dad, my parents, they worked really hard so that we live in a we live in a pretty nice area,
Mm,
but my dad, he worked like, my mom worked at like a teletech company, and then my dad worked like 3 jobs around the clock
mm,
so we can live here. And so my parents have always told me the importance of like, go to college so you can work hard and get a nice life. And I have been working towards that, but and I'm in I'm a bioengineering major right now.
okay.
And my life has always been kind of like, I don't know, I've never really gotten into trouble, so I've just sort of like been going down the path, but I'm sort of unsure of what I really want to do because I like biology, I like math and stuff,
Mm,
but I guess I'm trying to branch out and see what other stuff that may be available.
I see, I see. Okay. Oh yeah, that's nice, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jade. I mean, you kind of answered my question right there. I kind of want to ask, like, yeah, I saw, you're what, a bio major. You said you like math, you're kind of passionate about that. What kind of interested you, in my message, when I kind of brought up about business and kind of entrepreneurship, and what kind of like just wanted like wanted you to actually reach back out to me, like have this meeting today.
Been kind of like, I don't know, because I like bio, but I'm also, I wouldn't say that I'm super duper in love with it. And
Hmm.
so I am open minded to other stuff. So when you sent me the message, I was like, okay, this is an opportunity to learn more and get experience with something else that I haven't thought of. So yeah, that's sort of where I'm at.
Okay, for sure, yeah. So you're I'd say you're curious then. You want to learn, um, and yeah, I mean that's great. It's great. To always be open minded. I'd say that's like the best mindset to have. Because I've talked to a lot of people who are fixed minded, people who are open minded, people who are curious, people who are serious, and something that I say is yeah, that's definitely great to be open minded, but yeah, I mean. I feel like I actually wanted to not just get to know you today, but also just share a little bit more about kind of like what I've been doing and kind of like why I actually wanted to start all this because people ask me all the time like oh like yeah you have your own business, but like why did you want to start it? Like what's like your motivating factor? And for me it's because just like you said like your parents they've been working a lot. I grew up and I didn't have that that much quality time with my parents. My mom, my dad, they were always working, two or three jobs, just to, have a roof over our heads, just to, be able to put food on the table. And my parents are actually, from Jalisco, Mexico. And so,
Mhm.
what, my mom came when she was like 7 with her siblings, and my dad came when he was like 17 or 16, around that age, and pretty much have just been working their whole lives. And they don't really know anything like really else to but like to work because like yeah my dad just started his like own little business about like a few years ago, his own like taco truck business. His dream is to like eventually get a restaurant, but he's already like what 41 years old. So he kind of started like I'm not saying he started late, but he definitely didn't start like when he wanted to because what he had me, he had my siblings, and so just seeing them work every single day, they don't even have to tell me that they're tired, because I can just see it on their faces, you know really just makes me feel bad and like makes me want to like actually give back to them. And so I've like had it to be like my goal, to be like my dream, to be able to actually retire my parents by the time that they reach 45 years old. And I'd say that's like my biggest like why, like my motivation. And I mean it pretty much just comes up because of like just seeing my parents, like when I was younger I never really saw it that much, I didn't really look into it, but when I reflect back now, what being 20 years old, like half of their life, I see that pretty much that they never really had a lot of quality time with me, like what they're working like 50 weeks a year, and they got like 2 weeks of vacation. So it's not not much fun when your parents are just always working, you don't really get to spend that much time with them. And so I kind of just seen that growing up, and I was like, man, it's really been making me just want to be able to stop them from working, because eventually they're gonna get older, they're gonna get tired, and they're not even gonna be able to travel, and that's kind of like what they wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, I kind of want to ask you, Jaden, like what's kind of like your why, like what's your motivating factor? Because yeah, I know you're going to college right now. Let me ask you, are you currently working right now?
Been trying to get a job around here, but the thing is, I didn't apply. I because I was talking with my friends. They're saying, oh yeah, it's better to apply earlier, like in March, April, so that you can get a job right in summer. But I think I just sort of like forgot. So
Yeah.
I've been trying to apply for jobs, but there's no I'm still waiting for people to get back to me.
There you go. There you
But
go.
last year I got a job at Six Flags.
Okay.
So I was doing that for a couple months before I went to school.
Okay, for sure. So
And
you have
then
like some working experience then.
right, right.
Yeah.
But I do want to eventually. I do relate to you with what you said of wanting to give back to your parents, because I know my parents have worked hard, and my dad, he drives like an hour to work, and then sometimes he's stuck on the freeway from LA for like 2 hours, and he's I could see just the exhaustion on his face.
Mm.
So I want to I like what you say, kind of give back to my parents and let them be able to rest and take them places and enjoy
No, yeah.
enjoy life.
And really, be able to give them that, like, not just financial freedom, but that, like, like, what's it called? Like that mental freedom, of like them just, like having that to think about, what they have to do. Because I know that's just stressful itself, like that mental
Yeah,
stress. But, no, yeah. So I feel like, that, we almost have like the same why, wanting to give back to our parents. But, I kind of wanted to ask, like, I know you said you said you're a bioengineering major.
yeah.
What made you want to like go into bio and like go down that path?
Been interested in like kind of medical field stuff,
Mm.
but I'm not sure if I really want to be a doctor. I don't really want to be a doctor because of all the schooling and stuff and all the time commitment. I want to be able to have like when I have my career, I want to be able to come home and have time to spend with my family. And if I ever have kids, I want to spend time with my kids too. And so
Mm.
I'm sort of just trying to figure out what my life is going to be like. And I've
Mm.
seen other kids on my schools, like their parents have been in the like the medical field, and they have good careers, and they're able to like I don't know, they're able to provide a lot of stuff for their kids. And I've always my parents were not like rich, but I feel like I've always had everything that I've needed.
Mm.
So I sort of want to give my parents I want to provide for my parents the same way they've provided for me.
Mm. I
And I feel
see.
like my mom's always said that something in the medical field is pretty well paying. So I hope, and I also want to help people too, because I mean that's important to help others.
Mm.
And so yeah, I'm just sort of trying to figure out my life.
No, yeah, and I mean nothing wrong with that. What we're young college students right now. Let me ask you, what you're like, what 19, 20 years old?
18.
18. Okay, yeah. So what? You're even younger than I expected. And so, completely fine, not to know really what you want to do. And I'm gonna be completely honest with you. At the age of 18, man, I did not know what I wanted to do either. I didn't have, my life map, my life goals planned out. You know, but because of this business opportunity, but mostly because of this mentorship that I'm under, it's really been able to help me to really visualize and really plan out my life of, all right, when do I want to get my next car? At what age do I want to be when I buy my first house? How many bedrooms do I want to have in that house? How many bathrooms do I want to have in that house? How big is the garage going to be? So it's like a lot of specifics, because when I was 18, I was like, yeah, I want to get this Lamborghini, I want to have a house by this age. Okay, then my mentor was like, all right, how many bedrooms do you want to have? What's like the price range that you're looking for, in what area? He was really making me think about these things and asking me these questions to see how serious I was about these goals. Because what my mentor told me was like, if it was something along these lines, like, like if I like, dream about these goals, but I don't have a plan, if I don't have a plan to get to like where I want to be, it's just a dream. It's just a wish. It's not like a goal. It's not set in stone. But I can really relate with you too, because yeah, I was what I'd say for me, I just really wanted to, I'd say like start a business. And I've always kind of had like this mindset because, when I was younger, I would just, I was like that kid in elementary school and middle school that would kind of go around selling chips and Arizonas and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those guys. I was so
No, I know who
can
you're talking about.
Yeah, so I was so candies, what like whatever it was, I was selling it. It was clothing, shoes, whatever it would try to be, but I would mostly focus with like, food, because, people love hot Cheetos, people love Takis, like everybody's gonna want to buy that. So, at a very young age, I was just always hustling, always trying to make money. Why? Because I never liked asking my parents, for money when it came to like, field trips or things like that, because I just knew that, yeah, they could probably like, help me with it, but I know that, we barely had enough. So I really just try to find ways to, I say, necessarily be more independent, but be more interdependent and try to just, learn a little bit and just work a bit harder than, most kids. So I'd like wake up early, go to like Safeway or whatever it was, Food Max, and try to just stock up on a bunch of stuff and then go to school and try to sell that stuff. But pretty much what I was trying to, say is that I've always kind of had this like entrepreneurial spirit because I've just always been wanting to like yes, give back, but in a way also be able to, like support myself and be able to, yeah, like you said, help others. Because I feel like, that's really important, and I actually like that you said that because not a lot of people nowadays are actually, like actually interested in helping other people. But that's something that, we actually, that like we promote a lot, we are in our business and our mentorship, we promote people before profit. And that's something we're very keen on because, we feel like without people there's no business, without people there's no profit. If you don't help anybody, how are you going to help yourself? So I actually really like that you said that. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious, like what do your parents do for like a living? Like what does your mom and your dad do now?
My dad, he works at I don't know exactly what he does, but he works at a hotel in Santa Monica,
Mm,
and he's kind of like I think he's like the front desk guy or something,
okay.
something around that. Because I know he has different things that he does in there. And then my mom is she works at an elementary school. She's one of those kids, not one of those kids. She's you know how there's the special ed kids kind of.
Yeah.
She's like one of the adults that's like kind of like helping the teacher with the kids, if
Okay.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So she's like, yeah, yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have.
I had a question. So what's your tell me about your business. Tell me like what exactly you guys do.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially what we do, well, let me before to even talk about what we do. It's my business is e-commerce and franchising. I'm not sure if you've heard about those two before. You haven't?
No. No.
Okay, so you're not familiar with e-commerce or franchising?
Well, I've heard the terms, but I don't really know exactly.
Okay, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can actually break it down for you. E-commerce, are you familiar with like Uber or Airbnb?
Yeah.
Okay, so think about I'd say those. I can like we can use Uber for example. Uber is a type of e-commerce platform. You know, they don't own any cars and they don't have really any employees besides people who want to sign up for Uber. What they own is the platform itself. So essentially I like to call them the middleman. Why? Because they own a platform. They have a system. And so what Uber does is they connect people who need what? A ride, who have the money to spend, to people who are, working for Uber who have a car, people who need money. So what does Uber do? Uber connects both of those people together. And so let's say maybe that one transaction where this person's driving for Uber, maybe they make like what, 94% of the income. And um and Uber makes like what, 6%. Like who do you think makes more in that one transaction?
The employee.
Exactly, right? The employee. But what? Let's say, for example, there's 10,000 Uber drivers in Santa Monica. You know, who do you think is going to make more money if you zoom out and look at it from like a global perspective?
They're they're taking money. They're getting more. They're getting money from different like transactions.
Exactly, right? Yeah, so yeah, it's only 6%, but 6% from 10,000 people is a lot more money than just 94% from one transaction.
Hmm.
And I like to use that example because I feel like it works really well because um, okay, if we were like to use like Airbnb for an example, same exact thing. E-commerce is like the same exact platform. Essentially what it does is it just connects people who need the product or service to people who have the money who are able to afford it, and then we're just a platform in the middle that connects both of those people together. And for franchising, you're familiar with like McDonald's or like Starbucks and things like that, right? Yeah. All right. So let me ask you, you think McDonald's makes the best cheeseburgers?
Yeah, I guess so.
You think
I'm
so?
more of an In-N-Out guy, but I like the small cheeseburgers.
Okay, okay. Well, all right. Maybe they make good cheeseburgers. Let me ask you this: do you think they make better cheeseburgers than the Pav?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, yeah, the Pav is pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, so they make better cheeseburgers than the Pav. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is that. it's simple, you know. It's easy to make, you know. It's not that hard. But what I'm really trying to get at is that if you ever like really observe a McDonald's, you know, and you kind of go anywhere in the world, you kind of, you know, realize that, you know, most McDonald's are the same. You know, they have like the same format. The menu's usually the same. They have a drive-through, and you know, you can just hire like pretty much any 15, 16-year-old to kind of flip patties there. Why? Cuz you know, it's easy, you know. It's not that complicated, you know. And so pretty much what I'm trying to get at here is that, you know, McDonald's is what? Yeah, it's a franchise, but do you know how much it is to buy your own McDonald's?
No, much.
It's $1.2 million.
Wow.
And so I don't think you and me together combined have that amount of money to buy one.
No.
And so that's why, you know, we combine it with e-commerce because yes, franchising is, you know, it's profitable, but it's not that very systematic. You know, it's not that scalable. So, you know, like if I had my own McDonald's and you asked me, "Hey Christopher, can you teach me how to get my own McDonald's?" And I'm like, "Okay, but first give me $1.2 million." Because it's not something you can really teach. You know, you gotta like it's almost like a pay to win type of thing. You have to buy your own McDonald's, and if you want to grow, you gotta buy another one, and you can't just build one up from the ground up. So pretty much when it comes to like I'd say McDonald's is, you know, it's simple but it's not easy because I don't think anybody has the type of money to really buy a McDonald's. But it's simple because what? They have a drive through. You know, the menu's almost the same. And, you know, it's not that hard to really, you know, understand the whole concept, you know, to work at a McDonald's. And so I'd say, well, connecting that back to, you know, my business, you know, my business is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple because there's really only two things that you really have to do. One of them is what? Something that we're doing right now, you know, just networking, getting to know new people, just talking to people, breaking the ice, you know, starting conversations with other people. And two, just sharing our product and service, you know. And I say it's not easy because what? We're human. Look at us. We're young adults, young entrepreneurs. You know, we're emotional. We have life. We have a family. You know, we have school. You know, we got jobs. You know, our car breaks down. We have a flat tire. Our girlfriend breaks up with us. You know, so all these things that we have going on in our lives is what makes it a bit more difficult to run a business because, you know, usually you think of like, you know, businessmen and you think of what? Middle-aged man. You know, they kind of have their lives figured out already. You know, they have like a house and everything like that. But, you know, when you see, you know, young, you know, adults like what, 18, 22, 25 years old, you know, you're like, oh, he has a business? So you're kind of like, you know, you kind of have like that assumption, you know, that's like, oh, you know, he can't be a businessman, he's too young, something like that. But yeah, I mean, pretty much, you know, that's I'd say like the most like surface, like I'd say like surface knowledge that like I mean I could share right now. I'd say at this moment I could share more about it, you know, but you know I still want to talk about some few other topics, you know, today. But I mean, if we did, it would kind of drag it on to like what maybe a 2 3 hour meeting if I kind of broke down everything to you. And I don't think you or me would kind of just want to sit here for 2 to 3 hours talking about my whole business model. So we kind of break it down into segments. Just so it's not so much like overload, because I know most likely after this you're gonna have questions. But if we talked about everything, man, you're gonna ask me like 100 questions, and I'm not saying I'm not willing to answer them. It's just, you know, I got, you know, things to do today. You got probably things to do today as well. But yeah, definitely like when we finish this meeting, I can, you know, definitely let you know of when you'd like to meet up again, if you'd like to meet up again, maybe to actually learn about the business model, the structure of the business, how it really works. I'm actually having a meeting later this week on what on Thursday, pretty late. I'm not sure if you'd be willing, you know, open to that. It's gonna be from 8 to 10 p.m. That's where I'm actually gonna bring in my other business partner, who's actually gonna be able to kind of help me show like the structure of this business plan, and you know, show like a slideshow of it. But I mean, before we kind of talk about that, I mean, I know I kind of touched about like, you know, mentorship and kind of, you know, obviously, you know, how the mentorship kind of changed me. So I mean, like before I go into that, I actually wanted to, you know, ask you like if you've ever like, you know, experienced or like, you know, ever had like a mentor before to kind of like guide you in life.
Like an official mentor, but I have my sister. I've like if I've had questions about stuff, she would help me and sort of guide me.
Mm. Okay. No, yeah.
She's 14 years older than me, so there's kind of like an age gap. So
Mm. Okay. No, and that's great. I mean, at least you have someone, to reach out to, someone to talk to, someone to, ask advice to. Um, for me, I mean, it was my dad or it was my mom, and nothing wrong with that. But what I didn't realize is that, you know, some things, my parents weren't really qualified, to really ask, to really give me advice, because, like I said, my parents were struggling financially, so, I don't think it was the brightest idea for me, to be going to my parents, asking them for financial advice, if they themselves are kind of struggling, because, I mean, how am I going to be able to take advice from someone who isn't doing good in that, aspect? And I'm not saying, don't take advice from your sister, don't take advice from your parents, I love my parents. I still ask them for advice, but now I'm really able to kind of filter out and really see like, all right, is this advice applicable to me? Should I apply this advice, or should I just take it and kind of just like have it sit there? But I'd say over
wait, can you give me
time,
1 second? I gotta grab my charger.
yeah, no, you're good. No worries.
Thank you.
All good.
Yeah.
All right, all right. No, but yeah, but like I was saying, I mean, like I used to take advice from my parents, my mom, my dad, and I'm not saying, don't take advice from them. I still ask them for advice. Sometimes I still take their advice. But, throughout the time of, being able to be under this mentorship, being able to, learn from my coaches, my mentor, I've really been able to, yes, filter out, but also, know how and what, to ask, my coaches, like, hey, what, my coach, she was able to what, leave her, she was able to make more income in her business than her professional accountant job when she was in college. And I was like, what? Like, that was just like I was surprised by that because I'm like, you're in college, you're working as an accountant, but you're able to make more money, in what, this business than you are in your own job. So, I definitely wanted to ask, start asking my coach, for financial literacy questions, things like that, to actually learn about, how to save money, how to, grow my portfolio. But I was always very, I'd say like what confused on like who I should ask because I wasn't sure, like, oh, are they qualified, give me the right information or not? Are they qualified, to give me like the best answer, to my question? But yeah, I mean, over time, this mentorship has, not only just taught me, like who and what to ask questions to, but I'd say it's helped me a lot to actually self develop myself, personally develop myself on actually wanting to grow. Cause let me ask you, have you ever like like joined a club or like like done like I don't yeah like joined a club or done anything like that to like actually want to like I'd say like develop yourself like further?
And when I was in 8th grade, I I was the leader. I was really the founder of our Uno club, and so we
Mm.
basically just played Uno the whole time. Yeah, that was it. And then in high school, I tried bringing it back, but my friends and I, it was our first time doing a club, and we were like, because in junior high it's more guided, but
Mm.
in high school it's kind of just sort of okay, you guys are on your own.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the teacher that we had to host it, she bailed on us,
No day.
but so we kind of tried to make it work, but it didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I did like our Christian club in high school, and
Okay.
so I did that for a little bit, but I didn't really have as big of a role. I was just sort of like throwing ideas at people.
I see. I see. Okay. No, yeah. I mean, well, that's great and all, being able to actually start clubs. You just made me you reminded me of when I started a club in high school as well too, and it's actually still going. And like you said, me and one of my friends were actually like the founders. Like we kind of started that club, and it's still going on, so that's nice. But yeah, kind of where I was touching at was, I've been able to not just give up some bad addictions, but really be able to actually want to like open up and be more vulnerable with people that I honestly didn't even know about. Because if I'm being completely honest, man, I was like, since I kind of grew up in these negative associations, kind of grew up with people backstabbing me. When I first went to one of these like business conferences, have you ever been to like a business conference, like a business seminar?
I have.
Okay, so just like I was what I met with my business partners in Wisconsin. We got to know each other a little bit like this, and it was on like the third meeting. I I met up with them, and I actually went down to what is it, Santa Clara, and so it was a meeting at like a hotel, and I remember I wanted to just drive myself down there. My mom was like, "No, you're not gonna do that. Like, I'm gonna take you. Like, you don't know these people. They're gonna like steal you. They're gonna rob you." I'm like, "Mom, chill out. Like calm down. They're not gonna do that to me. Hopefully not, you know." And so, I mean, I'm still here, so they didn't do that. But my mom just thought like worst case scenario, things like that. But yeah, I went to like my first business seminar, and that's actually where I was able to actually meet my business coach, meet my mentor. But what I really realized is that, it was nothing like I really expected. I was expecting something like very professional. Yes, I went in a suit and tie, but man, what, 18, 19-year-old Chris, I didn't even know how to tie a tie right. My tie was super short. It was like right here, not even like tied right. And I was like, man, like I was like nervous, I'd never been to one of these meetings. And so I went in and, it was just completely different than what I was expecting. People were yelling, people were like, super hyped up. I'm like, dang, what? This is a business meeting? Like what type of business meeting is this? Like I was like confused, but I liked it. I liked the ambience. I like, how everything was. People weren't putting each other down. If anything, people were like lifting each other up, and they were being very positive. And so me, I'm like, all right, what's the catch? Like, what are they trying to do to me? Like I was just thinking these negative, like skeptical things, but at the same time, it's like I always kind of thought like that because like just of like what I grew up, like in the environment that I grew up in. But I remember something I vividly remember was my coach at the time, who I didn't even know was my coach. Like, oh, we have some new people here today, in the front row. And I was like, oh, I wonder who they are. And he's like, oh, Christopher, and I'm like, wait, me? And then I could like stand up. He's like, oh yeah, come like introduce yourself to everybody, and like man, and like a room full of professionals and a room full of like other like college students just like me. I'm like, damn, I'm over here talking with the mic, dressed professional. But man, I was nervous because yeah, man, like I like to like I said, I'm very outgoing, very talkative. Like I could talk to a tree, but when you put me in an environment that I'm not comfortable in, like in a room full of people that I don't know, man, I'm like a fly in the room. You won't even know I'm there. And so when they put me up on the spot, I'm like, man, I didn't sign up for this. Like, what's this? And so I start introducing myself. Um, I share, how my business partner Tony actually, invited me to this meeting. But when it finished, actually, that's when I got the opportunity to meet my mentor. And his name is Phil, by the way. And kind of before I tell you this little story, let me just give you a little bit of background about him. Just like you and me, his parents were immigrants, and he was an immigrant from Vietnam. He came to the U.S. when he was 18 years old, and he went to SJSU, San Jose State University, and he was working as a dishwasher. He had broken English, didn't really know how to speak, like, I'd say like very well, very broken. But, he didn't let that stop him, so he like defied all the odds and, just like me, started his business at what, 18 years old. And by the time he was 22 years old, he actually had the opportunity to retire himself. And when I heard that, yeah, I was like, "What? Oh wow!" I was like, "Dang, I've never met anybody that young who's been able to retire themselves." And besides like on what social media, oh, buy my subscription and you can like retire, like So like I was like, all right, like like I gotta meet this guy, like I was concerned, like all right, either one, like my first thought was like, either one, this guy's a scammer, or two, this guy's like moving a bunch of drugs or something, like that was my first two thoughts. I'm like, all right, like this guy's doing something illegal, but he didn't just stop there, at the age of what, 24, he retired his mom, and at 25, he retired his dad. And so when I heard that story, I'm like, this guy was able to retire his family, before he was even, what, 30? And what, like, at 26, I remember he actually was able to, what, get them They able to sponsor both of his parents and fly them to the U.S. So when I heard that, I'm like, man, like his story was incredible. I want to meet this guy. I want to ask this guy questions. Like, who is this guy? So I'm like, all right, Phil, like I'm on the hunt. Like I gotta find this guy, Phil. So after that meeting, I got the opportunity to speak with him, and I had this question in mind. Like I had it locked in my head. I'm like, all right, you know what? Like I know what I'm gonna ask him. I saw him. I introduced myself. I shook his hand. I'm like, hey, Phil. Nice to meet you. This, and that. He's like, oh, nice to meet you, Christopher. And then I asked him, like, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah, go for it. I'm like, if what you're doing is legal and ethical, can you be my mentor? And he just looked at me and he was like, all right. He's like, thousands of people ask me this question. Every single business seminar, every single business conference. So he looked at me. He's like, what makes you different, Christopher, than everybody else? And man, like I said, 18,
Question.
19-year-old Chris there, I was like shook. I was like, oh, dang, no one's ever spoke to me like this. And he just had me stumbled in my tracks. I didn't know what to say. But that's when I thought of a bright idea. At least I thought it was at the time. I pulled out my phone and I pulled out my resume. I'm like, oh, I have experience in this and this, cash handling. I've been working since I was 15. I have all these skills, these traits, leadership, da 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 da. He's like, you can put that away. He's like, that tells me nothing about you. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you know how many people lie on the resumes? And I was like, dang, I'm too honest. I should have lied. No, I'm playing. But he told me, he's like, you want to know what I look for, Christopher? And I was like, yeah, like tell me, like what do you look for in like a business partner? What do you look for, for someone who wants, to be your mentee? And so he's like, I look for people with integrity, people with accountability, people with communication. If what you say you're gonna do matches what you do. People with transparency. So all these things he listed out, they're not things you can just, find out from a person like one time meeting them. Like today, you think I'm gonna be able to know, if you have all those characteristics, all those traits? Probably not. It takes time. You need to, be with someone. You need to kind of, not evaluate them, but just see how they move, see their actions, see if what they say matches, their actions, and that takes time. It's not going to be like a 1 day thing, and that's kind of why we have like this 7-step selection process, so we can spend time together. Maybe not physically, but through Zoom now. We're in the 21st century, so we can do a lot of things online now, but that's why we have a 7-step selection process, so we can see, if you're accountable. Because like I said, I talked to a lot of college students, talked to a lot of professionals. Oh, I'm serious, Chris. I want to do this business, this, and this, and that. I'm like, all right, that's awesome. And then the next day, they disappear. And so, that's why my mentor, he's really, emphasized that, we look for people with accountability, people with integrity. And so all these like traits, these characteristics, it's not something you're gonna just be able to, identify in 1 day after meeting someone, which is why it takes time. But yeah, I mean, after that, I was like, man, the guy, like the way he carries himself, the way he speaks, I was like, oh, this guy speaks with conviction. The way he dressed, his suit looked like $1,000. I'm like, dang, like, I want to continue learning from this guy, And he kind of got swarmed with a bunch of people, but I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I want to come back. I want to, learn more. I was on step 3 out of step 7, so honestly, I was still very new. I was still learning about everything, but yeah, and that's exactly what he told me. Just come back. I'd love to see you and ask me more questions next time. And so that's exactly what I did, and I was able to actually finish the process. But what really stood out to me like throughout that meeting was really just like the people there, because that's something that I like, to tell everybody, like when it comes to this meeting today, yeah, I'm going to obviously be evaluating you, but I want you to evaluate me. If you see yourself, doing business with me or partnering with me in the future, because it's a two-way street, it's not just going to be like, oh, I tell you all these things, do all these things, and then you do nothing, or the opposite way around. It's a two-way street, we can't have a meeting without, two people, right? So what but yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I'd say like the people really stood out to me in this mentorship, because something that we promote is, no vulgarity, no smoking, no drinking, and no judging other people. Don't mess with other people's money. Don't mess with other people's spouses. And so when I got put in this environment with such positivity, I was like, man, what's the catch? How much do I gotta pay? Like, what's up with this, because man, I was so skeptical. I'm like, like what's the charge? Are you guys gonna charge me anything? And I found out it's completely free. Why? Because we believe education should be free. The only thing that we want to see is you investing time into something new. You investing time into wanting to learn about this process, about this business. Because we believe time is more valuable than money. Money comes and goes. But once you invest your time into something, once you put your time into something, you're never gonna get it back. That's why time is a lot more valuable, at least for us. And so, I like to just share that out to a few people. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about that so far, Jaden?
What you guys um, stand for? It was integrity, communication, and what was the third one?
Like accountability,
Accountability,
transparent.
yeah. And then I also like what you said about no vulgarity, no smoking, no drinking, because that shows people are trying to discipline themselves and self control themselves.
Exactly.
And something that impressed me today was because you said you had the technical issues about the the Zoom meeting, and you were only late by like 1 or 2 minutes, but you still apologized for being late. And over here, I've had people I've always shown up on time, but I've had people they show up like 20, 30 minutes, an hour late to stuff, and they don't apologize.
No, yeah. I
So I
mean,
think I like the values that you guys have, and yeah, I'm interested to learn more if you guys would have me, or
no,
if you
yeah.
guys would be down to learn more and get to know each other more.
No, yeah, definitely, Jaden. And yeah, I mean, before we know, we kind of wrap things up. And yeah, no, I mean, I actually like that, you kind of pointed that out because, yeah, what? I was late by 1 minute, late by maybe 2 minutes, but that's still 1, 2 minutes that you're never going to get back. Why? Because you waited for me. So why shouldn't I apologize for that? Because if that was me, I'd like the same thing in return. Because, like you said, I've been in those situations. I've been where people are late and they just go on with the meeting. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this guy didn't even apologize. Like, I've been here waiting half an hour. Like I'm never gonna get that time back. This guy didn't
Yeah,
even like have like the manners to say sorry or like, oh, I apologize, for being a little late, but give me a reason why. But yeah, when it comes to things like that, that's just because of what this mentorship, because of what we stand for, and yeah, when I got put in this environment, I'm like, man, it was a bit awkward for me at first because I was like, man, like I've never been with like surrounded by such positivity. I've always been surrounded by a bunch of negativity, but you know, I've been able to, slowly change and not just, let's say, change like my appearance, my demeanor, my attitude, but really just like my whole self. And I didn't even notice it at first until maybe what my mom pointed it out, my girlfriend pointed it out. And, they were like, oh, I see you changing. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, oh, in a good way. And I was like, oh, okay. And now my family's like, yeah, you dress differently. The way you talk is different. The way you carry yourself. And yeah, this business has been able to help me get a lot of things, outside of business, like what, a better job, like working at the bank. Why? Because I have the confidence in myself not to actually walk into a bank with a full suit and tie and be able to really just what, sell myself to the job. But yeah, I mean, before we kind of wrap things up, Jaden, I actually wanted to send you some material, that my mentor, recommends us, that we kind of share out after, we meet up like the first time. So, I mean, I actually wanted to ask, actually, I mean, I actually wanted to share with you this video. It's a video from my mentor, by Phil, and it's about like, what, 50 minutes, I think. He's gonna kind of talk about more about like entrepreneurship and kind of like why you should choose entrepreneurship and kind of talk about like some like what, like 8, 10 characteristics of like the wheel of life, kind of like show you like a more broad understanding of kind of what we talked about today, and kind of just like why you should just learn about entrepreneurship in general. Um, how does that sound?
yeah, sounds great.
Okay, for sure, yeah. And I want to ask you, when do you think you can have like the video, maybe like watched and maybe like just take some notes or maybe just cook up like a reflection of like what you thought about it. Bye.
Mm, Tonight or tomorrow, I could watch it.
Okay, for sure. Yeah. No, yeah. And I mean, the only reason I was asking was because, like I said, this Thursday, actually, I'm having a meeting with one of my business partners where we will be showing, like, it's like the next step in the process. You can actually get to know him. You maybe even ask him some questions as well. Um, because just like you, I was curious, I wanted to learn about this. And yeah, I mean, I can just forward you that video. I actually wanted to ask you, is there maybe a better way we can stay in contact? Because yes, I do check my LinkedIn, but I need to get better at checking it more consistently.
Yeah.
I do check my phone number, my messages a lot more. I'm not sure if that's something you'd be open to.
Yeah, we can do phone number.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, I can put my number right here in the chat. You have any other plans for today, Jaden?
Sort of. I might go to the gym later with my dad, but that's about it.
Hey, what are you gonna hit today?
I don't know. I'm trying to. I used to go pretty often, but
Okay.
I sort of Hold on, let me find the thing. But I've sort of kind of like fallen off.
Mm.
So I need to get back into the rhythm.
Yeah. I mean, what's important though is that you're gonna go back, you know?
Yeah.
And that's always the hardest part, starting over again. Cause what? Just like you, I was in the rhythm for like what? I remember before I went to college, I was super locked in, had like my dream physique. I was like, just like, man, I love my physique right now. I went to one vacation in Mexico. I came back and man, I lost all my gains. I just gained weight. I was just fat. But you know what? Again, I'm working out again. I just went on my run this morning. I was actually able to work out this morning too. I hit arms. So yeah, I mean that's awesome too. It's always good, have that like self discipline, mental discipline as well. Slowly build that up.
Okay. Give me a second to put the phone number in.
Are you good?
Yeah. Put it in. I sent you hi.
All right, yeah, I just got it.
Um,
For sure, let me save your phone number. Let me see. All right. Yep. Got your phone number. Let me see. I just sent you a message back. So you can save that as well too. But yeah. I mean, I can send you the my mentor's video through there. It's like what 50 minutes. But yeah, I mean, once you're done with it, you can just kind of maybe just share with me what you thought about it, or maybe just share some notes if you took notes on it. But really, I just want to be able to kind of just see what you learned from it, or maybe just like a reflection of maybe what things you might start to like think about, or maybe just maybe even be applicable to your own life. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have any other questions, comments, concerns, Jaden, I mean, just feel free to send me a message. You have my number now. I'm just a text away. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was great getting to know you today, Jaden, and
yeah,
you know,
great to meet you too.
it was great, talking to you today. Getting to know a little bit more about your background and kind of like why you're interested in learning about this. But yeah,
Man, we'll keep in touch. I'll watch the video and I'll let you know.
for sure then, Jaden. Sounds good then. All right, you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
All right, bye bye.